vision usually refers to numbers. That's what they really mean. When I go to a national conference, the vision always is a number. We want to have this many members nationwide by X amount of date and time. At work, at Rema recently, the CEO declared a vision, and guess what? It was a number. We want to try and reach 500,000 people by so-and-so date. In many Christian circles, vision really just means number. Tell us the number. I got no idea. I got no idea about numbers. None at all. My experience is that these types of visions, frankly, are a load of nonsense. That very rarely do they actually result, and even if they did, what would it even mean? I've been part of churches that grew and grew almost exclusively through transfer growth. But they didn't say that when they confessed that they'd reached their goal. If they were being more honest, they would have said, our group grew by this many people and other churches shrunk by this many people. That's what actually happened. You see, numbers have to be interpreted. And if the net effect is not the growth of the kingdom of God, I care less for your numbers. But I confess that the numbers thing is part rationalization. Because if this room was full, I probably wouldn't have an allergy about numbers now, would I? So it's also part rationalization. It's part defense against disappointment. It's part defense against things not being the way that you hoped that they would be. So I confess, as a frail human being, I harbour hurts and disappointments that after 15 years, I've never worked out how it is that we can grow as a community. That's the truth. I feel disappointed. And that has made me allergic to talking about vision, because the conversation then becomes, let's come up with another thing that won't work. That's the problem. That's the bruise that presses on inside of me. So I want to talk about vision, much less about numbers and much more about who it is that we are becoming. Because success, friends, is not about what you do, but who you are becoming. Now, if that's true for individuals, then it's true for communities as well. And the vision that we need to be concerned about is less about numbers and much more about who we're becoming. Because that's the kind of success that God is far more interested in. So we're going to talk about that today, because who we are becoming is the kind of vision that seems to actually get us somewhere. Last year, the vision about who we were becoming was becoming a community that resourced people, that resourced our gifts. And so in the intervening year, we started the preaching team and more recently the pastoral care team, which we'll talk a bit more about at the AGM. We've brought on Bex and Carol onto the staff to release them into their gifts. We've worked much harder at becoming a community that doesn't just give lip service to gifts, but tries to actually activate, encourage, and equip gifts, because that's the kind of success God is really interested in. And I've learned we're going to have to leave the numbers up to Him. And in the end, the Bible makes it clear that one waters, one sows, another one waters, but what? It's the Lord who brings the increase. God's the only one who can bring increase. So part of the problem of these numbers visions is that you're trying to do God's job for Him. God has said, I'll do the growing part, but you do the sowing and the watering part. And isn't it interesting that in our time of sharing this morning, how many of the prophecies that came through referred to exactly that kind of idea? The harvest where you sow into the lives of others, as Lee said. Oh, That's the kind of people we're to become. So that's been quite a success, actually, to see people raised up. It's been a challenge. It hasn't worked out quite the way I hope, but nothing ever does in life, does it? So you have to get used to that. But the general idea is true enough that that's the vision, one of the visions that we started last year, becoming a church where we actually activate the gifts. And this coming season, and who knows if it'll be just 2017, and who knows if we have to wait till then. But certainly who we are becoming next is this. From Matthew 5, you are the light of the world. A city located on a hill cannot be hidden. And it was interesting that some of the prophecies this morning were about just that, becoming a city on a hill. One of the challenges we have is that we don't meet in our own building, and that means that we disappear. You know, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, we'll be gone from this neighbourhood. There'll be no evidence that we exist until 10 o'clock next Sunday. No evidence at all. No way to know. Our light is officially hidden for 6 days and 21 hours every week. That's a challenge. That's a challenge that we need to overcome, not because of numbers, but because our hope is for lost people. And if we are not the city on a hill that can be seen, how can we give the hope that we have to offer? You see, that's about who we're becoming. We're becoming a people who are more concerned about those who do not yet know the light, who do not yet know the Lord, than we are about simply doing church the way we like it. Of course, when Jesus spoke this verse about being a city on a hill, he was referring to Jerusalem. When you go to Jerusalem, the last bit of every journey to the temple is up, because the city of David is at the top of Mount Zion. And that's why becoming a citizen of Israel is still called Aliyah. It's called making Aliyah. Aliyah means to go up. The last bit of the journey is always to go up. So Jesus was thinking about Jerusalem. And now you can think about all these verses, about ascending the hill of the Lord, that this was the place where the dwelling of God was. And we are to be a city on a hill. We're to be a light in a dark place. But our light is not currently seen by many, if any. Thank you, Scribe. How many churches roll like this? Not many, if any. It's an old song reference, sorry. And for the oldies who didn't get it, never mind. This graph here shows us about population change in Waitakere, if you can't see it from where you're sitting. The pink lines are the years that we're in and following, where between 2,000 and 4,000 people are coming to live in Henderson every block of time. That takes us right up to 2033. That's the prediction population increase. Did you know that every time someone moves home, the chances of them becoming a Christian goes up? Did you know that? If they're not a Christian? That people are most open to the gospel during any time of significant change in their life, because they are reinventing themselves. When you get married, that's a time to try and reach someone with the gospel. They're starting to think about what my life really wants to be about. When they have children for the first time, that's a time to reach them for the gospel. What kind of family are we going to be? And when they move into a new neighborhood, the stats tell us that people who move into the neighborhood are open to the gospel, because their life is changing and their mind has already opened up to the idea of change. We've packed up all our belongings. We're about to set up a brand new life in Henderson. What will that life be like? Well, Jesus could be part of that life. You see, you are more open to hearing about a change when you're already in the midst of change. Your mind is ready for the topic. And yet, thousands of people are going to move into Henderson. And will they encounter us? Will they know that we exist? Will they hear the hope that we have to offer? Probably not. Not right now, anyway. Now, among those families moving in, even of this, let's say it's 2,000. The stats would say roughly 10% are Christians. That's 200 Christians moving into our neighbourhood who might well now be looking for a new church. Will they visit us? No. I go to national conferences, and the last time, I just got irritated. It's hard not to be, because it just doesn't make there's not any value to you when they'll have a workshop on church growth, and the workshop is all about visitor follow-up and this very sophisticated way of recording people's information and then following them up in the days following the service. I'm like, dude, I can use my hands to count the number of visitors we have each year. Why would I need this system? Why would I need it? So that's the problem. But the good news is, and some of the people sitting here can testify this, our retention rate for visitors is incredible. Because the reason they develop these systems, the same church that's teaching us this is saying, you know what, of every 100 people who visit the church, only 10 will stay. You know what? For every 10 people that visit our church, 8 of them stay. People like Harvest when they come. They just don't come. That's the problem. So we have to be a city on a hill. We have to be a community that says, no, that's not acceptable. Because the hope we have is so real, so genuine, so life-changing, that we need to take responsibility, each and every one of us, for being the light. Because yes, we'll work out some ways to try and tell the world we're here, and that's a little bit of it, a very little bit of it. What's much more a part of it is, what would it be like if a community of Christians said, I intend to be a light on a hill. I intend to be visible. I intend to be intentional. Too many of us in our workplace are undercover brothers. We're keeping it on the DL. That's the down low for those who don't know. That's the DDL. That's the down low. Some of us are not known to be Christians. Or if we're known, it's kind of like, well, he plays soccer, he's a Christian. We use it like that as a way of describing kind of your hobby. But you know what? The people in our world who know the genuine Christians, they don't talk about you like that. In fact, sometimes they're talking about you in a slightly more scary way, don't they? They're like, oh, Mike Tataran, man, he's a Christian. Be careful. Don't get caught into his vortex. Next thing, he'll be giving you a word. It's a scary thing to be really properly known. I sat on a fishing boat yesterday with Dave Billinghurst and Deepak, and we had a very lively discussion about baptism. And I, in a nice loud voice, said to Deepak, in the hearing of the whole boat, I will publicly testify to being a follower of Jesus anywhere, anytime. I am not remotely embarrassed for everybody on this boat to know that I follow Jesus Christ. And when I say in a loud voice, it was loud. It was really very loud. Every single person on that boat heard me say that. And you know what? What was really strange was, rather than shrinking back and feeling scared, I felt bold. I suddenly was aware that, you know what? I'm thinking, almost getting up and starting preaching. Because I realized there was nothing to be afraid of. And my hope and our hope is so real that if all is holding us back is that we might feel a little embarrassed, a little bit nervous, well, frankly, we need to get over ourselves. Because the eternity of lost people is far too important. So what have we done? This next slide begins us talking about the things we have done over the years. This was an event. Who actually has been at Harvest long enough to remember free speech? So free speech was an outreach that we held down at a sports bar in the village in Great North Road in Henderson. That's gone through several identities since then, but it was a sports bar once upon a time. And we held a hip-hop event called Free Speech. That's got Dawn's attention. She was like, oh yeah, Bring that on. And we would have some younger members of the church present the gospel by rapping freestyle off the top of their head. And one night, I tell you, friends, you have seen nothing until you have seen Debbie Ironside freestyle rap to a group of strangers. You have not lived. You know that granny, the hip hop, the hip and the hopper? It was way worse. It was something. It was bad. And thankfully, Debbie was not the instigator of this, but Willie Varakura, who was good. And he was passionate about connecting. We were being a light. In fact, speaking of light, we've had light parties. It's really interesting, actually. Now I realize we're going to have to think more carefully. You see, we've had a logic at Harvest that I think hurts us. So we have to rethink it. And the logic has been this: don't reinvent the wheel. If another group is having a light party, let's support them. And there's some really great logic to why we would do that. But you know what the problem is? That means we don't have a light party. That means our community absolves itself of responsibility to reach its own neighborhood. That's the downside. The upside is Christian unity. We're working together. We're sending our kids and our families to a local light party. But the problem is we've absolved ourselves of evangelistic responsibility. Because you see, when you host the light party, you don't just bring your kids. You want to get the kids from the community to come along. But when you go to a light party, you don't take the community kids with you. You just take your own kids. And for a while there, we ran light parties. And kids, often up to 80 of them at a time, would come. And some of the families, those who know the Primrose family, we met them at a light party that we had hosted. And before we had finished, between us and the Te Arotu congregation, we had baptized every single member of their family. I loved Christine's story. Christine had come from an Anglican background, so she objected initially to the idea of being baptized by immersion. But as is the deal here, and let me tell you, when we have our next baptism service, if you've not been baptized by immersion, be ready for the conversation I had with Deepak. You better get ready for a fishing charter, because I'm going to ask you to be baptized, to obey Jesus, not to obey Aaron, not to obey Harvest, but to obey Jesus. And so Christine finally got into her heart that yes, she could obey Jesus. And the beautiful thing is that we baptized her son Luke, who in turned around and in the very next minute baptized his mum. Wasn't that a cool thing to do? Now, our baptism services have often been in public. I'm not sure, Kayla, what your problem is. Look at you with your hands over your eyes. I think you're just wiping some water from the eyes. One of our many Piha baptisms. A few different beaches there. Part of our public witness, being light in the community. Now, yes, from time to time we'll do our baptisms here in the service. That's fun, but it's also fun to get out there in the midst of the world and say, I'm not ashamed to follow Jesus. We've got to be careful. We don't keep rationalizing why it is. We keep hiding the light. Oh, I'm just focusing on relationships. Just trying to build friendships with people. I don't want to scare them off. I've been friends with them for like 20 years now. It's good. You brought up Jesus yet? Oh no. Friends, there's a problem. There's a problem if there's someone in your life who you love, but you've not loved enough to share Jesus with. Because I would suggest to you don't really love them that much then. Because if you loved them, you wouldn't dare let them step into eternity without having heard that there was a way to be ready and be prepared. We're going to be a light. We had a community newsletter. Warren is proof that the newsletter works. He picked up a copy of the Juice for the Harvest a few years ago when we were distributing it in the community. Was it the local flower shop? Bethany Flowers had it. And he picked up a copy. And he read a testimony. We used to distribute 1,000 of them every month. Little articles on family and faith testimonies. But we stopped because we didn't have the energy. We didn't have the commitment to deliver the Juice for the Harvest. And frankly, as much as I like walking, I'm not doing 1,000 of them by myself. I'm just telling you things we've done in the past when we were trying to be a light. Some of you may not remember that when we were at Swanson Primary, we used to run a breakfast. A couple of times a week, we'd run a breakfast for the kids. You know, some of the kids come to Swanson Primary, the only breakfast they have is a Red Bull. And that means your first class is awesome. But your second class is not so awesome. So we were feeding kids because we were trying to be a light. And we've stopped owning this the way we used to own it. We used to own this. Here's us in the community clearing the garden of an elderly man who lived next door to Craig and Ruth Scott. There's Debbie's late father, John, and I can't tell from behind who that other person is. But anyway, a group of men of the church went and cleared that section as a witness, trying to be a light. You see, I don't know if you've noticed, but nobody can see us from here. Nobody can see us. We're not a light here. Matthew 5, let's read the whole verse. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Now, I've told you some things we've done in the past, and we could happily do some of them again. But I've told them more because I wanted to get your mind starting to think, hold on, what would we do now? Dawn's thinking, can we do free speech? I so want to rap. I so want to see Dawn rap. Come on, Dawn, you can do it. Dawn's thinking, I'm more hip replacement than hip hop these days. What can we do? There's not a person in this room that can't be part of being a light. We'll leave the results up to God. We won't take responsibility for his part. We'll take responsibility for our part. And vision's about taking responsibility for who you're becoming. And are you becoming someone whose light is brighter, shining brighter and brighter to the world, or dimmer and dimmer as the years go on? That it's got buried down deep so low. I got that joy, joy, joy deep in my heart. So deep that nobody's ever seen it. But if you're committed to being the light, then you won't let that be. And it's never too late to say, from here on, the light's going to get brighter. Now look, you might not be ready to be telling a group of strangers on a fishing boat that you're not ashamed to follow Jesus, but I tell you what, we're going to find out who it is you'd be willing to tell and how it is you'd be willing to be a light. So friends, for good or for bad, that's our vision about who we are becoming. The city on a hill, that's what we're going to call it. That's going to be a little phrase around here at Harvest. And vision, as you may have noticed in the New Testament, is a community exercise. I do not believe that it's the job of the senior pastor to have the vision for everybody. That's an Old Testament way of thinking. I am not your prophet. I am not your priest. You are the prophet. You are the priest. I am just one of the brothers. Now, yes, I've owned some more responsibility than some others, but I'm just one of the brothers and Debbie is just one of the sisters. So please enter into the conversation with us. Tell us what it is you believe God is saying to you. But let me tell you, if you come, expect that we are going to expect that you are owning your words, that you are coming to say how you have heard and how you are responding, not what we need to do. You hear that? I don't need to hear any more about what we need to do. I'm busy. I need to know what you are hearing from God that you are willing to own. And that if the vision burns deeply in you, that you're coming and saying, well, I don't know about free speech, but I do know about this, and I want to be part of something, and we're going to help you be a city on a hill.